let my brother and his wife stay with me during the crisis. A few months later, she moved her parents in, packed my bags, and asked to leave my house for a week. We're having a family party. So I smiled, and the next morning, my name is Megan, and at 42 years old, I've finally found peace in my life. It wasn't easy getting here, especially after losing Tom, my husband, to cancer 3 years ago. We were together for 15 years, and I still catch myself reaching for his side of the bed some mornings. Tom left me everything, our big house in the suburbs and about $700,000 in savings and investments. I know it sounds like a lot, but I'd trade every penny to have him back. Still, I've made a comfortable life for myself. I work as an HR manager at a tech company downtown, and I've learned to enjoy my own company. My parents, on the other hand, think my life is empty. Mom calls it wasting away, and Dad nods along with whatever she says. They've been married for 45 years and can't understand why I haven't remarried. You're still young enough to find someone, Mom says at least once during every visit. And it's not too late to have children. You know, there are options these days. I visit them once a month, always on a Sunday. It's a 2-hour drive that I've come to dread. The minute I walk through their door, the lectures begin. Megan, I ran into Susan Williams at Bridge Club, Mom will say, her voice dripping with forced casualness. Her son David is divorced now. He's an accountant, you know. What Mom doesn't mention is that David Williams still lives in his mother's basement at 39 and has been between jobs for the past 3 years. I know all about these sons of Mom's friends. They're looking for a meal ticket, not a wife. Thanks, Mom, but I'm not interested in dating right now, is my standard response. Last Sunday's visit started like all the others. I arrived at noon, helped Mom with lunch, and braced myself for the inevitable relationship inquisition. But something was different this time. They didn't mention David Williams or any other eligible bachelor. Instead, they were unusually quiet during lunch. Is everything okay? I finally asked, suspicious of the peace. Mom and Dad exchanged a look. Well, Mom said, carefully folding her napkin, we're worried about your brother. That got my attention. Jake is 35, 7 years younger than me. Unlike me, Jake had followed the traditional path, married Vanessa 3 years ago. My parents adored Vanessa from day one. She was pretty, polite, and most importantly, wanted a big family. What about Jake? I asked. He lost his job, Dad said. The company downsized, and he was one of the first to go. And now he and Vanessa can't afford their rent. They're going to be evicted at the end of the month. I nodded slowly, already sensing where this conversation was headed. They need a place to stay, Mom added, her tone shifting from concern to demanding. Just until Jake finds another job and they save enough for a new apartment. I sighed. Jake's a bit chaotic, Mom, you know that. And I'm used to living alone. He's your brother, Mom said sharply. Family helps family. And Vanessa is such a lovely girl. She'll help around the house. They won't be any trouble. I doubted that Jake had always been the golden child, but he was also impulsive and disorganized. Even as a kid, his room looked like a tornado had hit it. And while Vanessa seemed nice enough from our limited interactions at family gatherings, I didn't know her well. How long would they need to stay? I asked. Just a few months, Mom insisted, 3 at most. Jake has some promising leads already. I doubted that too. The pharmaceutical industry had been laying people off left and right. Please, Megan. Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hand. We'd take them in ourselves, but you know our place is too small. Their 2-bedroom condo was indeed too small for 4 adults, and my house did have plenty of space. After an hour of guilt trips and promises that Jake and Vanessa would be perfect house guests, I reluctantly agreed. Fine. They can stay with me temporarily. But we need to set some ground rules. Mom's face lit up with relief. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Jake will be so grateful. I'll call him right now. As Mom rushed to the phone, Dad patted my shoulder. That's my girl. Jake's lucky to have a sister like you. I smiled weakly, already regretting my decision. But how bad could it be? A few months with my brother and his wife, I could handle that, right? A week later, Jake and Vanessa arrived at my doorstep with 4 suitcases and hopeful smiles. Sis, Jake hugged me tight, his familiar cologne bringing back childhood memories. Thank you so much for this. We promise we won't be a burden. Vanessa hung back slightly, her blonde hair pulled into a neat ponytail. We can't thank you enough, Megan. This means the world to us." She seemed genuinely grateful, her voice soft and sincere. I showed them to the guest bedroom on the first floor. "Make yourselves at home," I said, handing Jake a set of keys. "I've cleared some space in the kitchen cabinets for your stuff." "This is so generous of you," Vanessa said, looking around. "I'd love to help out while we're here. I can cook and clean, it's the least I can do." "That would be great," I said, feeling slightly relieved. Maybe this arrangement would work out after all. I usually get home around 6, and I'm not much of a cook. "Don't worry about a thing," Vanessa smiled. "I'll take care of dinner every night." We worked out a simple arrangement. I would buy groceries for all of us, and they would handle cooking and cleaning until they found jobs. I also asked them to be mindful of utilities. Tom and I had installed smart thermostats and LED lighting throughout the house to keep bills reasonable, and I wanted to keep it that way. The first few weeks were surprisingly pleasant. I'd come home to delicious home-cooked meals, Vanessa was an excellent cook, and a clean house. Jake spent his days job hunting, and Vanessa kept everything running smoothly. I even started to enjoy having company around after years of living alone. About a month into our living arrangement, I noticed things starting to change. The hot dinners waiting for me when I got home became less frequent. The house wasn't as tidy as before. One Tuesday, I came home to find the kitchen untouched since breakfast, dishes still in the sink. I made myself a sandwich and sat down to eat alone. Around 7:30, Jake and Vanessa finally came home. "Oh, you already ate," Vanessa said, barely glancing at me as she dropped her shopping bags on the counter. "Yeah, I figured you guys were busy," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Everything okay?" Jake opened the fridge and grabbed a beer, just running some errands. I noticed Vanessa's bags were from high-end stores I couldn't afford to shop at regularly, even with my comfortable salary. I wondered how they were affording shopping sprees when they couldn't pay rent. The next evening was similar, no dinner prepared, and the house a mess. When they finally showed up, I decided to ask directly. "I thought we had an agreement about dinner and keeping the place clean," I said, as I microwaved leftovers. Vanessa sighed dramatically. "I've been super busy lately. I'm starting a business with some friends. We've been meeting here during the day to plan everything." "Here? You've been having people over to my house?" I felt a flash of annoyance. "It's just a few friends." Vanessa shrugged. "We needed somewhere to meet." I put down my fork. "Vanessa, this is my house. I don't know these people. I'm not comfortable with strangers being here when I'm not home." "They're not strangers, they're my friends," she snapped. "They're strangers to me," I countered. "If you want to meet with them, you should go to a coffee shop or one of their houses." Vanessa stared at me for a moment, then threw her fork onto her plate with a clatter. She pushed back from the table and stormed off to their bedroom. Jake glared at me. "Way to go, sis. She's trying to build something here." "Jake, I'm not trying to be difficult." But he didn't wait for me to finish. Just got up and followed his wife. After that night, the atmosphere in the house changed completely. Vanessa stopped acknowledging me altogether. No good morning. No, how was your day? Nothing. She also stopped cooking for me entirely. I'd come home to find evidence that they'd eaten, take-out containers or dirty pans, but nothing left for me. I went back to preparing my own meals, just as I had before they moved in. 2 months into their stay, I was beginning to feel like a stranger in my own home. One evening, I found them sprawled on my living room couch, watching TV and sharing a large pizza. They didn't offer me any. I decided it was time for another conversation. "Hey guys, quick question, how's the job hunt going?" Jake barely looked away from the TV. "Oh, making progress. What does that mean?" I pressed. He shrugged. "I've had a few interviews, nothing solid yet." Vanessa didn't even pretend to acknowledge me. "It's been 2 months, I reminded them. "When you moved in, we talked about this being temporary. We'll let you know when we have news," Jake said dismissively, turning back to the TV. The following Sunday, I drove to my parents' house for our monthly visit. Jake and Vanessa had declined to join me. I was actually relieved. I needed to talk to my parents alone. When I arrived, Mom hugged me tightly. "How's everything going with Jake and Vanessa?" "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," I started. Before I could continue, Mom launched into her concerns. "Jake says you've been pressuring them about finding jobs. He says you treat them like they're taking advantage of you." I was stunned. "What?" I barely mentioned it. I just asked how the search was going. He says you're making them feel unwelcome, Dad added. That's not like you, Megan. They promised to help around the house, and Vanessa stopped doing that weeks ago, I explained. And she's been inviting people over without asking me. Mom shook her head. They're going through a difficult time, Megan. You need to be more understanding. Understanding? They're living in my house rent-free, and I'm buying all their food. I could feel my frustration building. They're family, Dad said firmly. Family supports each other. I realized there was no point arguing. My parents had already decided I was in the wrong. I changed the subject, and we had an uncomfortable dinner before I headed home. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked in my spot. Confused, I parked on the street and went inside. The moment I opened the door, I saw several large suitcases in the hallway. Voices came from the living room, more than just Jake and Vanessa's. I walked in to find an older couple sitting on my couch. I recognized them as Vanessa's parents, Robert and Linda, though we'd only met a few times at family gatherings. Everyone fell silent when I entered. Megan, Jake said with forced enthusiasm. Look who's visiting. I pasted on a smile. Hello, Robert, Linda, nice to see you. Linda nodded stiffly. Megan. Jake, can I talk to you for a minute? I kept my voice pleasant, though inside I was seething. Jake followed me upstairs to my home office. What's going on? I asked once the door was closed. Why are Vanessa's parents here with suitcases? Jake ran a hand through his hair nervously. They're just visiting for a week. They're on their way to Arizona to see Vanessa's brother. And you didn't think to ask me before inviting them to stay in my house. I could hear my voice rising. Please, Megan, Jake begged. It's just for a week. They'll be gone before you know it. I took a deep breath. This is exactly what I was talking about, Jake. This is my house. You can't just invite people to stay here without asking me? I know. I'm sorry, he said. But they're already here. What do you want me to do? Send them to a hotel? I stared at Jake's pleading face and felt myself caving, again. Fine. 1 week. But, that's it. Jake's face lit up. Thanks, sis. You're the best. As we went back downstairs, I noticed Vanessa had made dinner. Suddenly, she was being helpful again, now that her parents were here. We all sat down for dinner, and I tried to be polite despite my irritation. So Megan, Linda, Vanessa's mother, began. This is quite a lovely home. How many bedrooms did you say it has? 4, I replied between bites. And you live here all alone? Robert, her father, asked. Yes. Tom left me everything when he passed. I didn't like discussing my finances with people I barely knew. Such a large house for just one person, Linda remarked. How do you manage the upkeep? I manage fine, I said shortly. Linda exchanged a look with Robert. You know, if I had a house this size, I'd probably sell it. Too much space for one person, and the money could help other family members. I nearly choked on my water. Excuse me? I mean, you could sell this place, give half to your brother so he and Vanessa could buy their own home, and you could get something more appropriate for your situation. The audacity left me speechless for a moment. Jake looked uncomfortable, staring at his plate. When you have a house like this of your own, I finally said to Linda, keeping my voice level, you're welcome to sell it and give the money to your children. This is my home, and I have no plans to sell it. An awkward silence fell over the table. Linda pursed her lips, and Vanessa shot me a venomous look. We finished dinner with minimal conversation. The next week was excruciating. Every time I entered a room, conversations stopped abruptly. Linda and Robert asked invasive questions about my finances, my job, and my personal life. They treated my home like a hotel, leaving wet towels on the bathroom floor and dishes in the sink. I counted down the days until they would leave. Friday couldn't come fast enough. When Friday finally arrived, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders as I drove home from work. Soon it would be just me, Jake, and Vanessa again, which was still not ideal, but better than having Vanessa's parents there too. As I turned onto my street, I rehearsed what I would say to Jake. It was time for a serious conversation about their job search and moving out timeline. 3 months had passed, and they showed no signs of leaving. I pulled into my driveway and walked to my front door. When I opened it, I froze. Several of my suitcases were sitting in the hallway. Confused, I opened one. Inside were my clothes, hastily folded, and crammed in. My toiletries were stuffed in a side pocket. I heard voices from the living room and walked in, my heart pounding. Jake, Vanessa, and her parents were huddled together, looking at what appeared to be a guest list. "What's going on?" I said loudly. "Why are my things packed?" They exchanged glances. No one spoke for a moment. Finally, Vanessa shrugged. "We're planning my parents' 35th anniversary party. Their relatives are coming here tomorrow." "Here, in my house?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It's just for the weekend," Jake said weakly. "And where am I supposed to go?" I demanded. "We thought you could stay at a hotel," Vanessa said casually. "Or with your parents, we need the space for the guests." I stared at them, dumbfounded. They had packed my belongings and planned to kick me out of my own house for a party I hadn't even been told about. "This is my house," I said slowly, my voice shaking with anger. "You don't get to decide who stays here or who leaves. If anyone's going to a hotel, it's your relatives." "Don't be ridiculous," Linda scoffed. "We can't ask family to stay at a hotel. But you can ask me to leave my own home?" I was incredulous. "It's just for one weekend," Vanessa said dismissively. "Don't be so selfish." "Selfish?" I nearly shouted the word. "I've let you live here rent-free for 3 months. I bought your groceries, paid all the utilities, and put up with your complete lack of respect for my home and privacy. You're being dramatic." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "I want your parents out of my house by tomorrow," I said firmly. "And there will be no party here." Linda gasped. "You can't do that. We've already invited everyone." "Watch me," I said coldly. I turned to Jake. "I expected better from you." Jake at least had the decency to look ashamed, but he said nothing in my defense. I went upstairs to my bedroom, slammed the door, and called my mother. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. "Mom?" I said when she answered. "Jake and Vanessa are trying to throw me out of my own house for the weekend so Vanessa's parents can have an anniversary party here." There was a pause. "Jake mentioned something about a small gathering," she said carefully. "You knew about this?" I couldn't believe it. "Well, yes, it seemed reasonable to me." "It's just for one weekend, Megan." I felt like I'd been slapped. "It's my house, Mom. They didn't even ask me." "Family helps family," she repeated her familiar refrain. "Why don't you stay with us for the weekend? It would give you a break from all the tension." In that moment, I realized my parents were complicit in this whole situation. They had known all along and approved of Jake and Vanessa's behavior. "I have to go," I said, and hung up. I sat on my bed, trying to process what was happening. My own family was trying to take over my home, and my parents were supporting them. I felt betrayed and angry, but mostly, I felt determined. I woke up early Saturday morning with a clear head and a plan. I listened carefully and heard nothing. The house was silent. I checked my phone. 7:15 a.m. Perfect. I peeked out my bedroom door. The hallway was empty. I tiptoed downstairs and confirmed what I'd hoped. Jake, Vanessa, and her parents had gone shopping for party supplies. This was my chance. Last night, after our confrontation, I pretended to give in. I went downstairs, put on a fake smile, and told them they were right. I was being selfish. I should let them have their party. My mother had called back, and I told her I'd be staying with them for the weekend after all. Jake looked relieved, Vanessa seemed smug, and her parents were triumphant. They believed they'd won. Little did they know. As soon as they left this morning, I sprang into action. I called a 24-hour locksmith I'd found online last night. He promised to be at my house within the hour. While I waited, I gathered all of Jake and Vanessa's belongings. Their clothes, toiletries, shoes, everything. I did the same with Linda and Robert's things. I packed them all neatly into their suitcases and duffel bags. The locksmith arrived at 8:30 a.m. By 10 a.m., every lock in my house had been changed. I paid Mike, thanked him profusely, and dragged all the suitcases outside onto the front lawn. Then, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea and waited. Around noon, a car pulled into my driveway. Jake, Vanessa, and her parents got out, arms full of grocery bags and party decorations. They saw the suitcases immediately. Confusion crossed their faces as they approached the front door. I heard Jake's key in the lock, followed by the sound of him jiggling it when it didn't work. Then came the knocking. "Megan, the key isn't working," Jake called through the door. I walked to the door but didn't open it. "That's because I changed the locks." There was a stunned silence. Then Vanessa's voice, "What?" "Open the door right now." "No," I said firmly. "I want all of you off my property." "You can't do this," Linda shrieked. "Our party is tonight. People are coming. You should have thought about that before trying to throw me out of my own house," I replied calmly. Jake's voice turned pleading. "Megan, come on, we can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. You've taken advantage of my generosity for months. You've disrespected me in my own home. And now you've tried to force me out so you can throw a party I never approved of. We're done talking." Vanessa started pounding on the door. "You can't do this. Let us in right now, or I'll call the police." "Go ahead," I said. "I'll explain how you've been squatting in my home and refusing to leave when asked. I'm sure they'll be very interested." Jake tried a different approach. "Sis, please. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. You've had 3 months to figure it out. Time's up." Linda was wailing now about her ruined anniversary. Robert was trying to calm her down. Vanessa had moved from pounding on the door to kicking it. "If you damage my property, I will call the police," I warned her. The kicking stopped. "Mom and Dad are going to hear about this," Jake threatened. "I'm sure they will," I replied. "Now please leave before I call the authorities." There was more arguing, pleading, and threatening, but I stood firm. Eventually, I heard them loading their suitcases into their cars. I watched through the window as they drove away. Jake and Vanessa in one car, Linda and Robert in another. As predicted, my phone started ringing almost immediately. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. Then came a barrage of text messages. "Mom, what have you done? Jake says you threw them out. Dad, call us immediately, young lady." I turned off my phone, made myself another cup of tea, and sat in the peaceful quiet of my home for the first time in months. The messages kept coming over the next few days. My parents called and texted incessantly. Their messages grew increasingly angry, calling me cruel, selfish, and heartless. Jake sent a long text saying he was cutting ties with me forever. I didn't respond to any of them. After a week, I finally turned my phone back on for good. The messages had slowed to a trickle. I heard through my cousin Emily that Jake and Vanessa had moved in with my parents. Apparently, my parents' tune changed quickly when they had to deal with Jake and Vanessa's entitled behavior firsthand. Emily told me my parents had given Jake and Vanessa an ultimatum: find jobs within 2 months and save enough for their own place, or they'd have to leave. I couldn't help but smile at the irony. It's been a month since I changed my locks. My parents still aren't speaking to me, and honestly, I'm okay with that. The silence has been healing. No more lectures about my life choices. No more pushing me to date men I'm not interested in. No more guilt trips about not having children. I've rediscovered the peace of my home. I've reclaimed my space and my boundaries. Some might call me selfish for not letting my family walk all over me, but I call it self-respect. Maybe someday we'll reconcile. Maybe my parents will realize that their golden child isn't so golden after all. Maybe Jake will grow up and take responsibility for his own life instead of expecting handouts. Maybe Vanessa will learn that family isn't a resource to be exploited. Or maybe not. Either way, I'm done being the family doormat. Last weekend, I repainted the guest bedroom, a bright, cheerful yellow that makes me smile every time I pass by. I've started hosting dinner parties for my friends, something I'd stopped doing when Jake and Vanessa moved in. I'm living my life on my terms. It may not be the life my parents envisioned for me, no husband, no children, just me and my 2 big house. But it's my life. And after standing up for myself, after finally setting boundaries that even my family couldn't cross, I'm proud of it.
My husband asked for divorce while I was in hospital bed. "It's more controlled here," he said, but when I checked our joint account, he turned ghostly pale. I never expected to find the letter that would change everything while cleaning out my childhood bedroom. My name is Riley, and until that moment I thought I knew exactly who I was in my family. The responsible one, the steady one, the one who stayed behind while my younger sister Emily chased her dreams. "Riley, honey, don't forget to check the back of the closet." My mother's voice carried up the stairs, that familiar note of control wrapped in sugary sweetness. "There might be some old school things we can donate." I rolled my eyes, shoving another box toward the door. 2008. I was well past needing reminders about thorough cleaning, but that was my mother. Always directing, always managing. Even now, as I prepared to help them downsize to a smaller house, she couldn't help herself. Closet was mostly empty when my fingers brushed against something wedged behind the baseboards, an envelope, yellowed with age. I recognized the handwriting immediately. My grandmother Eleanor's elegant script spelling out my name. My hands trembled as I opened it, careful not to tear the delicate paper. The date at the top made my heart skip. It was written just weeks before she passed away 5 years ago. Dearest Riley, it began. If you're reading this, then your parents have failed to honor my wishes. College fund I set up for you, $50,000 in total, was meant to be yours alone. I've watched how they favor Emily, how they dim your light. This money was meant to help you shine. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. What college fund? For years my parents had told me we couldn't afford college, that I needed to work to help support Emily's education. I'd believed them, accepted it as my role in the family. Riley, my mother's voice again, closer this time. What's taking so long up there? I quickly folded the letter, tucking it into my pocket. My heart pounded as footsteps approached the stairs. 5 years. They'd kept this from me for 5 years, watching me work double shifts at the diner while Emily attended her dream school. Coming, Mom, I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. Just found some interesting old papers. As I heard her footsteps retreat, I pressed my hand against the letter in my pocket. My grandmother had tried to give me a future, and my parents had stolen it. The quiet, dutiful daughter they'd always counted on was about to become someone else entirely, someone who wanted answers and maybe even revenge. I took one last look around my childhood bedroom, knowing nothing would ever be the same. Truth had been hiding here all along, waiting for me to find it. Now that I had, there was no going back. I waited until dinner to bring up the letter. My hands were sweating as I placed it on the kitchen table, watching my mother meticulously arrange the placemats like she did every evening. My father sat in his usual spot, already absorbed in his phone, while Emily texted away, probably to one of her college friends. I found something interesting while cleaning today, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. A letter from Grandma Eleanor. My mother's hands froze mid-motion. The silence that followed was deafening. Oh, she didn't turn around, but I caught the slight stiffening of her shoulders. Just some old correspondence, I'm sure. Actually, it mentions a college fund. I pushed the letter forward. $50,000. For me. Emily's head snapped up, her perfectly manicured fingers pausing over her phone screen. My father finally looked up, his expression a mixture of panic and guilt. Riley's sweetheart, my mother said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I knew too well. Your grandmother was confused near the end. She made a lot of promises she couldn't keep. The letter's dated 2 weeks before she died, I countered, and it specifically mentions that the money was already set aside. Really, Riley? Emily rolled her eyes. Are we supposed to believe Grandma just happened to leave you a secret fortune? Maybe she left me a yacht we don't know about too. My father cleared his throat. Your mother and I did what was best for the family. College costs are astronomical these days, and with Emily's potential. My potential. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. What about my potential? I've been working at that diner for 5 years, giving you half my paycheck while Emily gets to pursue her dreams. Don't be dramatic, my mother snapped, finally turning to face me. We've all made sacrifices. Your sister needed. Needed what? My voice cracked. Everything? Well, I got nothing. Emily's smirk faltered slightly. It's not my fault you didn't try harder in school. Someone had to make something of themselves. The casual cruelty of her words hit me like a physical blow. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to defend me, to acknowledge the unfairness. Instead, my mother began serving dinner as if nothing had happened. We should focus on the present, my father said weakly. What's done is done. I picked up the letter, my grandmother's words burning in my mind. They'd stolen my future, and now they wanted to pretend it never happened. As I watched them settle into their usual roles, Emily the golden child, my parents the devoted audience to her success story, something inside me hardened. You're right, Dad, I said quietly. What's done is done, but what happens next? That's up to me. The drive to Aunt Grace's house felt like an escape. After last night's confrontation, I couldn't stand another minute of my mother's cold silence or Emily's smug looks. Grace's cottage, with its overgrown garden and wind chimes, had always been my safe haven. I found her in the kitchen baking cookies like she always did when she was worried. One look at my face and she knew. You found the letter, she said, wiping flour from her hands. It wasn't a question. You knew? My voice cracked. All this time Grace's shoulders slumped as she pulled out a chair. Sit down, sweetheart. There's more you need to know. She disappeared into her study and returned with a manila envelope, weathered and thick with documents. Your grandmother didn't just leave you a college fund. She left detailed records of everything: bank statements, letters to the trustees, even recordings of conversations with your parents. My hand shook as I pulled out the papers. Count statement showed regular deposits over years building up to well over $50,000. Then, 3 months after Grandma Eleanor died, everything was transferred to a new account. They used it for Emily's college tuition, Grace confirmed, her voice tight with anger. Eleanor knew they might try something like this. That's why she made me promise to keep copies of everything. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I wanted to, believe me, but Eleanor made me promise to wait until you found the letter yourself. She said you needed to be ready to stand on your own feet first. Car door slammed outside. Through the window I saw my mother's SUV in the driveway. Grace, my mother's voice carried through the open window. Your neighbor said Riley's car was here. We need to talk. Grace squeezed my hand. You don't have to face them if you're not ready. But I was already gathering the documents, my heart pounding. Actually, I think it's perfect timing. I heard them before I saw them, my mother's heels on the porch steps, my father's nervous cough, Emily's dramatic sigh. Riley, my mother started as they entered, then stopped short when she saw the papers spread across the table. Color drained from her face. Looking for these? I held up a bank statement. Funny how Emily's tuition payments matched the exact amounts withdrawn from my college fund. You had no right to go digging through, Emily began, but Grace cut her off. She has every right. It's her money you stole. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. We were going to pay it back. When? I stood up feeling stronger than I had in years. After you finished paying for Emily's master's degree with my paychecks? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. In that moment, watching their carefully constructed lies crumble, I realized Grandma Eleanor had given me something far more valuable than money. She'd given me the truth and with it, the power to finally break free. The diner's fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and unreal as I mechanically refilled coffee cups during my evening shift. 3 days had passed since the confrontation at Aunt Grace's, and my parents had shifted tactics from denial to constant guilt-tripping texts. You look like you're about to drop, Sarah, my coworker said as I fumbled another order. Everything okay? Before I could answer, the bell above the door chimed. Emily walked in, wearing the designer coat our parents had bought her for Christmas. My stomach clenched. We need to talk, she said, sliding onto a bar stool. Mom and Dad are falling apart because of you. I kept wiping the counter, not looking up. I'm working. They're behind on the mortgage, Emily continued, her voice low. Dad might lose his job. Is that what you wanted? My hand still it. What are you talking about? They took out a second mortgage to pay for my last semester. She leaned forward. They were counting on your rent money to make the payments. Coffee pot slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. Hot liquid splashed my ankles, but I barely felt it. All those extra shifts, all that overtime, they've been using my money to pay for Emily's education twice over. Sarah appeared with a mop. Take 5, Riley. I've got this. In the break room, I slumped against the wall, my hand shaking as I pulled up my banking app. 5 years of deposits to my parents' account, money that could have been my own education, my own future. Emily followed me in. Look, I know you're upset about Grandma's money, but stop. My voice was barely a whisper. Just stop. They did it for me, she said, and for the first time I heard uncertainty in her voice. Because I had potential and I didn't? I turned to face her, or did they just decide that before giving me a chance? She flinched. That's not fair. Neither was stealing my future. I untied my apron. Tell Sarah I'm taking the rest of my shift off. Riley, wait. But I was already walking out, my mind racing. I had some savings hidden in a separate account, not much, but maybe enough for a deposit on a small apartment. Aunt Grace would help me figure out the rest. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Family dinner tonight. We need to discuss your attitude. I typed back 3 words that changed everything. I'm moving out. Then I blocked their numbers, started my car and drove toward Aunt Grace's house. The weight of years of manipulation and lies finally lifted from my shoulders, replaced by something that felt dangerously like hope. Sometimes I realized revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free. The apartment listing on my phone screen blurred as I sat in Aunt Grace's guest room surrounded by hastily packed boxes. A studio downtown, small but affordable on my diner's salary. My finger hovered over the contact landlord button when heavy knocking echoed through the house. Riley, my mother's voice sharp with desperation. We know you're in there. Grace appeared in the doorway, her expression grim. You don't have to talk to them. But I was already moving. 5 days of ignored calls and messages had led to this. Time to end it. They burst in as soon as Grace opened the door, my mother leading the charge, my father hanging back, and Emily lingering in the doorway like she was watching a play she hadn't quite decided to join. This ends now, my mother declared, brandishing a stack of papers. We've calculated everything we've spent on you since you turned 18. Room, board, utilities, food. You're billing me? I laughed, but it came out hollow. For being your daughter? For being ungrateful, she snapped. You owe us nearly $40,000. The room tilted slightly. You stole $50,000 from me and now you're saying I owe you? We invested in the child who showed promise. Her composure cracked. I needed you too. The words exploded out of me. I needed parents who believed in me, who gave me a chance instead of deciding I wasn't worth investing in. That's not fair, my father finally spoke. We did our best. Your best. I grabbed Grandma Eleanor's letter from my bag. Was it your best when you lied about this? When you used my rent money to pay for Emily's education? I turned to her. Did you ever once think about what it cost me to fund your dreams? Or were you too busy looking down on me from your pedestal? Silence fell. In that moment I saw them clearly, my mother's desperate need for control, my father's weak enablement, Emily's carefully constructed superiority. I'm leaving, I said, my voice steady. I've signed a lease. I start night classes next semester. You can't, my mother began. I can, and I am. I picked up my phone, pressed contact landlord while they watched. Grandma Eleanor believed in me. That's enough. If you walk away, my mother's voice turned cold. Don't expect to come back. I looked at my family, really looked at them, and felt something final settle in my chest. That's the point, Mom. I won't need to. The sound of my footsteps on Grace's hardwood floors echoed like a drumbeat as I walked away, leaving behind everything I thought I needed, walking toward everything I could become. Moving day arrived with a bitter winter rain. I stood in my empty studio apartment surrounded by the few boxes I'd managed to pack before my parents froze my old bank account. They'd even reported my car as stolen, forcing me to leave it behind. My phone buzzed a text from Emily, "Mom's in the hospital. Trust-induced panic attack. Hope you're happy with yourself." I deleted it without responding, but my hand shook as I unpacked a box of kitchen supplies. The diner had cut back everyone's hours, and my first tuition payment for night classes was due in 2 weeks. The walls of my tiny apartment seemed to close in. A knock at the door made me jump. I opened it to find my father looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Your mother's sick," he said without preamble. "Emily told me, we're losing the house." His voice cracked. The bank called in the second mortgage. Emily had to drop out of her master's program. I gripped the doorframe. "That's not my fault." "No." He pulled out his phone, showed me photos of my mother in a hospital bed. "Your grandmother would be ashamed of what you've done to this family." The words hit like a physical blow. "Don't you dare use Grandma Eleanor against me. She wanted us to stay together, Riley. Instead, you're destroying everything." "You destroyed it," I whispered, "when you stole my future." He shook his head sadly. "We gave your future to someone who can make better use of it. Deep down, you know we were right." I slammed the door in his face, but his words followed me inside. My tiny apartment felt like a prison cell, the rain against the windows a constant reminder of everything I'd lost. My savings would barely cover next month's rent. Course catalog for my night classes mocked me from the kitchen counter. The microwave clock blinked 2:47 a.m. when my phone lit up again. Emily had posted photos of our mother in the hospital with a caption that made my stomach turn. "Some people choose revenge over family. Pray for our mom." Comments poured in, family, friends, distant relatives, all expressing shock at my cruelty. Even my cousin Lisa, who'd always been kind to me, wrote, "How could you do this to them?" I curled up on my bare mattress, Grandma Eleanor's letter clutched to my chest. For the first time, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I wasn't meant for more than what they'd chosen for me. The rain kept falling, and somewhere in the darkness I lost sight of why I'd thought I could escape it all. The certified letter arrived exactly 1 month after I'd moved out. I almost didn't open it, assuming it was another attempt from my parents to guilt me into coming home. Instead, I found myself staring at official letterhead from Mitchell & Associates law offices. "Dear Miss Thompson, as executor of Eleanor Mitchell's estate, I am required to deliver this letter upon confirmation of your independent residence." My hands shook as I read further. A second account separate from the college fund, property shares, investments, enough money to pay for a full degree and then some. My grandmother hadn't just planned for my education, she'd planned for my complete independence. The knock on my door came less than 2 hours later. "We know about the inheritance," my mother said, pushing past me into the apartment. My father and Emily followed, forming a familiar wall of disapproval. "How did you?" "The lawyer called us first," Emily smirked. "Professional courtesy." "More like a warning," my mother added. "Given your recent behavior, we're filing for conservatorship. You're clearly not in a mental state to manage this kind of money." The room spun slightly. "You can't do that." "We can and we will." She pulled out a folder. "We have documentation of your erratic behavior, testimonies from family friends about your vindictive actions, medical records." "Medical records?" I grabbed the folder, flipping through pages of carefully curated evidence. "You've been planning this since you found out about the first letter." "We're trying to protect you," my father said quietly. "And the family?" "No." I threw the folder down. "You're trying to control me." Again, Emily stepped forward. "Don't be stupid, Riley. Just come home. Everything can go back to normal." And suddenly I saw it all so clearly, the pattern that had defined my entire life. They'd never stopped trying to dim my light, just like Grandma Eleanor had written. I walked to my bedroom and returned with her letter, holding it like a shield. "Normal? You mean where I work myself to death funding Emily's dreams while mine die? Where I believe I'm not worth investing in because you decided that before I could prove otherwise?" "Riley," my mother started. "Get out." My voice was steady, stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Get out or I'll call the police and report you for harassment. And then I'll take these documents to a lawyer, a real one, and show them how you're trying to manipulate the system to steal from me." Again they stared at me, shocked by this new version of Riley who didn't back down, didn't cave to guilt. "You'll regret this," Emily said as they moved toward the door. I thought of Grandma Eleanor, of her careful planning, of her belief in me. "No," I said. "For the first time in my life I won't." 1 year later I sat in my university's library, surrounded by textbooks and the gentle of students preparing for finals. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Grace. "Check your email. Found something while cleaning out Mom's old desk." The attachment was a photo of another letter from Grandma Eleanor, dated just days before she died. Unlike the others, this one was unfinished, trailing off mid-sentence. But what caught my eye was the book sitting next to it in the photo, her worn copy of Jane Eyre, the one she'd always promised to give me. "It's yours if you want it," Grace wrote. That evening I picked up the book from Grace's house. As I flipped through the yellowed pages, a small envelope fell out. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen before. Teenage Eleanor standing proud in front of her first apartment, keys in hand. On the back she'd written, "Sometimes the bravest thing is choosing yourself. Your turn now, Riley." I thought about Emily, who'd recently started working as a waitress after dropping out of her master's program. Last week she'd sent me a single text. I get it now. I hadn't responded, but I understood what she meant. My parents had sold their house, downsizing to an apartment. Mom had started working part-time at a local shop, her first job in 20 years. Dad's Facebook profile showed him looking older but somehow more present, less like the shadow he'd been. I ran my fingers over Eleanor's handwriting, remembering how everyone had expected me to break, to come crawling back when things got tough. Instead, I'd found my own path. My first semester grades had proved what Eleanor knew all along. I was capable of so much more than they'd allowed me to be. The book club I'd started at the local coffee shop had grown into a tight-knit group of friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. We were reading Jane Eyre next month, my choice. My phone buzzed again. Emily, can we talk? Really talk? I looked at Eleanor's photo again, at her fierce, proud smile. Revenge hadn't been about hurting them in the end. It had been about saving myself, about breaking free from a story they'd written for me, and writing my own. I texted back, "Coffee shop on Oak Street, Tuesday at 2. Maybe Emily was ready to write her own story too, maybe not. But for the first time I was okay either way. I had my own keys now, my own proud smile, my own unfinished chapters waiting to be written. I placed Eleanor's photo carefully between the pages of Jane Eyre and headed home to study. There was a future waiting, and this time it belonged entirely to me.